Welcome, guys. This is going to be our first episode. This is going to be Legacy of Lies. I know a lot of you guys probably aren't familiar with us, but my name's Gabe, and my co-host Pat.
Hello, everybody.
So, we're kind of trying to do a new thing here. We're going to do bunch of various different topics. We're going to start today with UFOs and alien encounters and kind of where we're at with disclosure. But we're going to bounce around on this show. We're going to do a lot of different stuff. We're going to do conspiracy theories, mysteries, kind of all kinds of different interesting topics. And we're just kind of getting started. So bear with us on the audio if everything's not perfect or whatever. We'll be working through it over the next couple of weeks. So thank you. Do you want to start on the first topic, Pat?
Are we going to talk about intergalactic space brothers?
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to start. And basically, with everything that's in the news right now, like about disclosure, and you kind of see stuff about the Trump administration maybe coming out and like endorsing disclosure, so to speak, or like people in the media and people that everybody knows. It's becoming more mainstream, I think, than it ever has been. And as it becomes more mainstream, I've definitely noticed some competing narratives that have come out about it. And one of them is the intergalactic space brothers thing. And I say that almost in jest, but that's like kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it for people that maybe aren't super familiar with it. But one of the narratives is that aliens, UFOs, interdimensional beings, whatever you want to call them, this narrative is basically saying that they are like our friends, our space brothers, so to speak, and that they are friendly, they're here to help us, and it's kind of like the rosy view of disclosure, I would say, where people are like not scared. And I kind of wonder, there's a part of me that wonders if that's not like a narrative that's being pushed so people aren't afraid of what potentially could be coming.
Yeah, that one's very interesting to me, and like most people, there's so much information. We're sitting here with laptops, and I mean, just information's
Right.
at your fingertips. So any conspiracy theory, it's all there for you to find. And I enjoy it, and I know you do too. But the Space Brothers one, I think, is the digger you deep, or the deeper you dig, it brings a lot of information in. And I think the thing that a lot of people struggle with or whatever is, what does that mean for their God?
Right.
So yeah. The story or, whatever they believe in, it doesn't really matter which religion. What does that do for that narrative?
Right.
And I think that scares a lot of people, at least.
The Pope's okay with it, apparently. Have you seen that? I said the Pope's okay with it, apparently.
Yeah,
it's
that's
pretty
really
interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, he basically came out and said it wouldn't change anything. And I forget which Pope it was. It might have been the last Pope, but he said like he'd be happy to christen Martians, basically, if they showed up on Earth. It was pretty interesting. But on that point, like almost every religion has some lore or history embedded in it about like, per se UFOs or something like that. Like Hinduism definitely does. Christianity, you could make arguments that a lot of the Old Testament are like early stories, like the burning bush. A lot of people equate that with potentially being a UFO. So
I remember, when I was very young, I was in Catholic school, and we had I believe it was like a Christmas concert, and I had one of the solos, and it stuck with me because as I was singing, the mic broke so nobody could hear me.
yeah.
But it was the story about Ezekiel saw the wheel way up in the middle of the sky.
Yeah.
And, so I did, as a little kid, it meant nothing to me. But the older you get and you start hearing theories, you're like, oh, okay, that's in that good book, and that makes sense. So
right. No,
yeah.
I think that it actually probably competes less with the religious narratives than a lot of people are worried about. Like, just my personal opinion, but
yeah, it doesn't. I don't, like, for me and my beliefs, it doesn't conflict at all. It just, two things can be true at the same time, which is what I think a lot of people struggle with.
Right. Well, and also, like, you talk about a book like the Bible, where they've cut out a lot of the other books that, you could make the argument had more evidence of things like that in it.
Yeah.
Because, like, the modern Bible, like the King James Bible, it doesn't include all of the books that were around for thousands of years that were commonly included in that history.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, if you want to get those, the Ethiopian Bible.
Yeah.
It has, I don't remember, it's a lot of books. But yeah, it has all the books that were excluded for whatever reason, that people had at the time.
Right. And I'm sure there's tons of reasons over the years why, this pope or this monk didn't want X story in the Bible. And, like, that's another thing. There's competing ideas on why that stuff was left out. But it just goes to show that, I think people should be more open to what could be coming out of something like this. Like, we're going into the great unknown. Like, nobody really knows with disclosure, like, whether it's even real. Like, you get into, like, the narrative, the other narrative we were talking about it potentially being, like, CIA, like, Project Bluebeam kind of stuff. For those that don't know what Project Bluebeam is, it's, in sum, it's like basically that the CIA is pushing some of this UFO narrative and is essentially trying to, through the use of technology and propaganda, is trying to, like, force a one world religion by coming out with an alien disclosure, holograms in the sky, like crazy shit. And that they will try to make, like, the portraits of Muhammad and Jesus and all these other religious figures merge into one in the sky at some point, and then basically is trying to show the world, like, we're all one, we all need to come under one religious banner. Like, I'm not endorsing that theory or saying that's true, but that is one thing that a lot of people are thinking could be, and there is proof that the Project Bluebeam exists on a level. I just don't know if there's effective proof that that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. It's and then you can just go, like everybody else in the world, you can just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and you take the Project Bluebeam and yeah, you start thinking, yeah, they're going to have projections up in the sky. So then it leads you down to, we landed on the moon, whatever, 60, 70 years ago.
Did we?
And we haven't progressed. Our technology hasn't progressed since then. Bullshit.
Right. I don't buy that.
Yeah. And I don't think, especially with the current administration, with Trump, he'll drop little hints about they have weapons that we can't even imagine. And, maybe that's just to scare the adversaries.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's dropping little truth hints for people, so.
Yeah. Trump is a weird political figure, not even in, like, a political sense, but just his personality. Like, a lot of people don't take him seriously because he's kind of a goofball. And,
yeah,
he was the Apprentice guy. A lot of people know him, but he does drop these little nuggets a lot in, like, his interviews and stuff. And it's hard to not read into some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, he almost does it in a way where, like, normies won't take it seriously, but, like, people that are looking at that stuff are like, oh, he's talking about this or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, actually. Like, you've seen the Obama interview a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Where he came out and said aliens are real, and then he kind of walked it back, like, a week later, and he's like, oh, I just meant from my own personal opinion, I didn't see anything classified. And then Trump came out and, like, he did an interview, I think he was on Air Force One, and there's, like, his aides are, like, laughing in the background, and he's like, oh, he shouldn't have said that, that's classified material. And then, like, that same day it said he was going to release all this shit about disclosure. And he plays these little games like that, and it's so hard to tell if he's being genuine or not, but I mean, it's entertaining one way or the other.
Yeah, that's why these things, and that's why I'm glad, we're going to give this, podcast a go, because, there's a shortage of podcasters out there, if you guys weren't aware.
Yeah, no.
Well,
definitely on this topic, yeah.
yeah. But you're right about him. You could call him many things, polarizing, a little bit crazy or whatever.
Right.
But I definitely think, just the vibe I get, or whatever you want to call it, is that um, when he says stuff that's a little off the wall, that's like he's actually disclosing stuff. I feel like he's,
Right.
maybe not everything, but when he says something that everybody's like, dude's crazy,
Yeah.
there's probably a thread of truth, and that's his way of getting it out.
I agree with that. And it's almost like he's saying it in such a way where like he's not going to get in trouble with the CIA
Yeah,
because he's
right.
saying it like in a way that most people aren't going to take him seriously, right?
Right.
And obviously we're getting a little bit like rabbit hole deep on that, but or maybe reading too much into it, but I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think that that's something that very well could be. But I guess we can bring it back to the whole original point, the intergalactic space brothers thing. Personally, I don't buy that. I don't think that if there was another alien species millions of light years away, which they'd have to be super far away, right? It's gonna just pack up in a spaceship and spend 50, 100, 200 years flying here, basically our whole human lifespan or multiple human lifespans to come here and do what? I don't believe that that's what they are at all.
Yeah, I probably waver a little bit back and forth just because I try to stay so open, but that's, like what you're saying right there, that's based on your human brain and our capabilities.
Sure.
So then you're like, well, 15 years of them flying, first of all, they if they're so advanced, they probably don't have to. There's a wormhole, whatever.
Sure.
They
yeah.
just materialize. They're from a different dimension, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, 15 years our time could be like 3 days for them.
Yeah.
Maybe they live to be 2,500 years old,
Right.
So,
Obviously that's from a human perspective,
Yeah.
but like it is hard to say when you just don't know what they have. And like you said, in theory, if that is what they are, if they're our intergalactic space brothers per se, like then maybe they do have faster than light travel figured out. Maybe the rules of the universe, the physics that we know, don't apply to them the
Right.
same way that they apply to us. Maybe they figured out a way around it, or we just don't understand it fully enough to like have a good grasp on what's possible. Because, all sufficiently advanced science is magic until you figure out
Right.
the truth behind the magic, and then you figure out what you need to do. But then the other option, obviously, which is kind of on the same point, is time travelers. And I forget the guy. It's an author. It's gonna kill me that I can't remember his name, but he did a bunch of interviews, and this was his theory that basically it's us from the future, and they're coming back, or we are coming back, and either trying to change the course of history or influence some small butterfly effect thing in the here and now that's gonna better them in the future or us.
Yeah. I, the intergalactic space brothers, just jumping back a little bit. I don't know that I buy it either. Probably for a little bit different reasons, maybe. And mostly because I think if, maybe it's just the pessimist in me, but if these people or these things could travel all the way and all that stuff, they're coming for a reason. It would be hard for me to imagine they're coming to help us,
right?
Rather than they want our resources. So why wouldn't they just wipe us out?
Yeah, but like on that thought, like they clearly could have already. If that's what they wanted to do, like and they're that advanced, they would have no issue getting rid of all of us in 10 minutes. So the fact that they haven't already is kind of proof in and of itself that I don't think that that's what's going on. Yeah. Or they're really cruel and they're trying to kill us very slowly.
Right. Yeah, and I think you might even have it. We might have talked about this before, but that's kind of generally where people, they look at that stance and then they start talking about angels and demons.
Right.
Like, okay, well, maybe it's good versus bad, and these are angels and these aren't, whatever. So there's plenty of theories and they're all very fun and interesting to explore, I think.
So it's kind of on the same vein, but the angels and demons thing, I think that actually fits in really well with the last bullet point on there, which is the extra dimensional beings theory. And I think depending on what your religion is or your spirituality or whatever, you can call them whatever you want. Because I think most people understand that angels and demons kind of are extra dimensional beings. I mean, they exist in a realm, if you believe in them, that is not our own.
Right.
And they can pass between those realms. And for me, this is that's the most like logical
Yeah.
But I'm open to all three or additional things that it could be. But I think that that's the most likely to me
Yeah.
because we just don't understand our own world at all and what dimensions are and any of the stuff that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why there's, just disclosure is like I'm excited. And I'm probably setting myself up for like complete disappointment, but
You're talking about 2027 or are you talking about Easter this year?
I'm talking about Easter this year.
Okay.
I'm very interested in, what we, if anything, what we learn. Because I've become, and most people, you don't trust hardly anything that you see on the internet. You question everything, or you should be questioning everything.
Yeah, how can you trust anything you
Yeah.
see on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, folks who just instantly trust things, they end up as, whether it's on the left or the right, like fanatical extremists. They just buy it and push it out. So, but most normal people are people who, like us, you'll look at all this information, and then even when you find the most logical, you're like, yeah, but who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
You can't ever allow yourself to like fully buy into anything with this stuff because nobody knows. That's the hard part. Belief in this is no different than belief in any god or whatever. It really is a religion in a way. There's not enough evidence behind it. I mean, there's evidence of, UFO sightings and there's evidence of crashes and crash retrievals, and we'll get into that probably in a different episode or later today, but we have evidence that those things have happened. We have no evidence what it is.
Yeah.
And that's really what the question boils down to. But like as far as Easter coming this year, which I know you are bought into that, or at least bought into the idea that something could happen.
Right.
And it is really cool. And for those that don't know, this prediction comes from Chris Bledsoe. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Chris Bledsoe. He's essentially what I would describe as like a modern prophet almost, or at least that's what he's billing himself as. He has had some crazy UFO experiences. I think it was right after the housing market crashed, right? Like 07, 08, I think is when he had his, because he had a construction company. He was a builder. And after the crash, he was falling on pretty hard times. And it was during this time where he was like at his lowest that he had these experiences in the woods out in somewhere in Appalachia. I think it was Tennessee. But he had a crazy experience with him and one of his sons out in the woods. They were fishing by a river. And he had all these aliens show up, like little aliens, saw lights in the sky, the whole 9 yards. And I guess he didn't really say he was taken per se, but it completely changed his life.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible story, whether it's true or not, you can make your own judgment on that as a listener. But and so then after the fact, he had a few more experiences. He had his what he calls the Lady in White experience. Yeah. And are you familiar with that? Or yeah, and that's kind of where a lot of this predictions and futurism kind of come from him, where she has told him, and I believe he equates her to being like Mary, or I don't know if he's ever explicitly said that, but that's kind of what the gist of it is that it's potentially Mary. There's going to be something that comes in Easter of 2026 that will be like kind of like a fourth turning or the start of a new spiritual era. You might be more familiar with it than me, but
yeah, unfortunately, like my memory when it comes to certain terms, but it's one that is it like the Eye of Horus? No, I don't remember. It's a star in the sky when it lines up with the Sphinx.
Yeah, I think it was the Sirius constellation.
Yeah. And again, little details kind of escape me, but it's when it's either red or blue or whatever,
right?
That humanity's basically going to be, given information, and that's as specific as I've seen him talk about it.
Yeah,
I have heard a lot of specifics about his encounter with the Lady in White, and it's being naturally a skeptic. I will tell you, the feeling I get from him is he seems like a very authentic person.
I would agree. Yeah,
and I think he's a likable guy when you watch him in all these interviews.
He's very soft spoken for
Yeah.
being a prophet or whatever other people bill him as.
Yeah. Most people that I have seen that talk about their otherworldly experiences or whatever, there's just something about him. Like a lot of people were looking for aliens when they found them. And
Right.
it's like, okay, did they will that? And this guy was praying. I believe he was having some serious health issues, and he goes for a walk and he prays, and he has this amazing thing happen to him. So I'm definitely. I think the reason that I wouldn't say that I wholeheartedly believe him or his story, um, but I think the reason I'm really excited for it is because it's one of the possibilities that's positive.
Yeah.
That's got like
You almost want to believe it,
yeah,
in a way.
right.
And I agree, because so much of the other stuff is all bad.
Right.
Like, I mean, talking about even like the 2027 theory, like almost every potential outcome of what people are predicting is very bad for humanity.
Is this
Um,
like from Project Looking Glass?
yeah, that's part of it. But like everybody's got their own. It seems like everybody and their brother has a prediction for 2027, but it's within the UFO community and within the greater, even like spiritual community. Uh, there's been tons of people who fancy themselves like seers, or um, I guess like not not psychics, but people in that realm that all say that there's going to be a major change in energy, tons of different stuff in 2027, and none of the connotations with it are very good.
Yeah.
It's all going to be potentially, at least for the short to medium term, very bad.
Yeah.
And I have heard some people say like, oh, it'll eventually get, we'll work through it and it'll be like the greatest time in human history, but the next 5 to 10 years are going to be dog shit. Like, it's not going to be fun for anybody that currently exists here.
Not like they say, nothing good is ever easy.
Right. You just hate to see, if something does come of that, you'd hate to see, millions of families broken, and, all the horrible stuff that could potentially come out of that.
Absolutely.
And there's so many things changing in our world right now, like, with wars and fickle politics, and kind of the like post World War II world order that's existed for the last, 75 years is kind of breaking up right now. And it's just a really volatile time in the world. So I think people are a lot more receptive to this 2027 theory that there's going to be a major change, in a year and a half, because of that.
Yeah.
People just don't have any certainty anymore that they did like in the 90s when everything was good, and nobody was worried about. I mean, there was Y2K, I guess, but that was more of a technology thing than a existential threat.
Right. Yeah, that was, I mean, you were 4 years old when that happened.
Yeah.
But, at the time I was an adult working in a factory, and not to get too far off topic, but that was in the news cycle. Like, I remember it. It was all anybody talked about for 3 months. And then, January 2nd came, and it was an old news,
Right. Yeah. Like everything else,
Yeah.
the news cycle. I mean, the news cycle probably wasn't as fast back then, but it's still like you can move on from a topic in a week.
Yeah.
The Monday to Saturday news cycle kind of thing.
I wanted to play this clip. We were talking about Chris Bledsoe, and this is a clip that it's not new. I think it's within the last, later half of 2025. He was being interviewed on News Nation, and this is one that, you start looking at how things line up with disclosure, and he starts talking about the communication he's having with our government. So I'm going to give this a shot. It's a really short clip.
Yeah, it should be good to go.
Have you had any direct communications with people in the Trump camp, in President Trump's family or camp or friends?
Some that's working with them, yeah.
So there is an interest?
Absolutely there is.
I was told there was. Yep. And I was told that there's a lot more happening behind the scenes on UAPs than people realise.
Big time.
So that's just interesting to me.
Yeah.
And what would be really cool is to have, somebody from Trump's administration confirm that, hey, we've been talking to Chris Bledsoe. I don't think that will ever happen.
Right.
But,
I mean, I do take the guy at his word, and I wonder though, and this is just the cynical part of me. I wonder if it's like CIA,
right.
and because there's CIA and DIA guys around him that have been around him for the better part of a decade, and that is where he takes a lot of flack. Is like he calls them his friends, and they very well may be his friends, but it definitely doesn't engender honesty.
Yeah.
Having a bunch of defense intelligence and central intelligence guys flocking around you and coming to visit you and your kids, and and you can make the argument that that's all because of like the things he's seen. They want to get that knowledge, right? Like that's kind of the way that he looks at it, but I think a lot of other people would look at it as like they're trying to spin the narrative
Right.
for him, and one of the theories, is that basically like trying to think of the best way to describe this, that like I guess it's hard to think of the right words to put it in for him, but like that his experiences feed into kind of like this Project Bluebeam deal with the one world religion and stuff, because even though he said that it's kind of like the lady in white is Mary and all that, the Project Bluebeam trying to get everybody under one world religion, part of the things that he's heard from the lady in white is that everybody is one, we're all of the same. And I think depending on your views, you could look at that in a Christian sense. You could also look at that as like it's really convenient messaging for the CIA if that's what they're trying to go for, if that's what the future is.
Yeah, it goes back to something you had mentioned earlier, at least one of the possibilities. Like I said, this guy seems very authentic. I believe he had an experience, and then you start wondering, well, maybe that experience was made for him,
right?
From those CIA folks. I mean, I'm not sure why him, right. But yeah, you think of those possibilities if they have some crazy advanced projector and they're putting that in his life for the purpose of, building a narrative, whatever they want it to be.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think any of us will know anytime soon if that's what it is, but it definitely makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why in this, UFOs, aliens, the whole disclosure thing, it's so impossible to be really sure about anything. Because even guys like UAP Gerb and guys that dig in really deep into like, I'm not sure if you've seen anything from him. He's really, really good. You should check him out if you haven't.
Yeah, I'll look it out. It doesn't sound familiar.
But basically, like, he does deep dives into all the defense contractor companies, like into Northrop Grumman, all these guys that do the real nitty-gritty, dirty work for the government. And, the overarching theory is that these defense companies actually hold a lot of the evidence of UFOs, like the crashed crafts, the bodies and everything, and that's so it can't be FOIA'd, because you can't file a Freedom of Information Act request on a private company.
Sure.
It kind of makes the government be hands-off enough where they can have plausible deniability, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But he does deep dives into these companies, and he's found out stuff that is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. If you haven't checked this guy out, I highly recommend it.
What's his name again?
UAP Gerb is his name. He does YouTube videos, and he also has a podcast format.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on Spotify, iHeart, the big ones. But
I'll check him out.
But yeah, I think going off of the whole Chris Bledsoe lady in white thing, I can roll into our next point about government disclosure. Like, do you trust it a lot, a little, or not really at all?
It's complex. Or, again, this probably just makes me look like I don't have an opinion or a strong stance, but that's not really the case. So I do think that, I don't trust that the government tells us the truth all the time.
Yeah.
At least intentionally. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. I do think that they have probably been disclosing information to us for many, many years. And I think it happens through movies and music. And not all of it, obviously.
Sure. Like Steven Spielberg.
Yeah,
like,
man. You look at some of these movies, and I remember the first time, I watched, this is probably not a great example, but Avatar.
Yeah.
And who has that imagination?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's a great point.
Because shoot, I mean, I've had some crazy ass dreams, but nothing. It'll have such detail, and maybe that's just a writer.
Right.
Maybe that's how writers are. But I think that there's more to it than that. I think that they use that so that way, when something big does happen,
people aren't surprised.
Yeah, or at least our human brain, it won't be such a shock to the system.
It's almost like a primer.
Yeah,
like they're getting us ready for it in a way. So I could definitely see that. It's so hard to say though, but it does seem like media over the last 15, 20 years has really started to skew the idea of what aliens are more into that like multi-dimensional kind of spiritual religious realm versus like 30 or 40 years ago it was like little green men.
Right.
And there's definitely been a noticeable shift in the way that that's portrayed, and that could just be society's idea of what it is shifting, or it could be the government controlling the narrative.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you're familiar, but so a lot of the big box office movies, like the Michael Bay, superstar movies that have $100 million budgets, a lot of those, if they involve the military in any way, are heavily influenced by the military.
Oh, really?
Were you aware of that?
Mm-mm.
So I forget the actual name of the program, but
well, real quick, influenced. What do you mean by influence? Like the narrative of
literally wrote the script.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, in some instances, sometimes the influence is lesser than that, but particularly the CIA and just the Defense Department in general, depending on the movie, like a movie like Independence Day, heavily influenced by the defense industry, because basically what they'll say is they'll go to the filmmaker, or the filmmaker will go to them and ask for help, right? Because it's really expensive to stage a battleship. It's really expensive to stage, an F-14 Tomcat. And they'll go to the military and say, hey, you have these things. Can you help us out with filming? Loan us some troops, loan us some equipment. We'll pay for the fuel kind of thing, but just help us out. And they'll say, yeah, of course we'll help you out. But
however,
yeah, there's a catch. We have like massive creative control over the script, and they'll change tons of stuff.
That's crazy.
And almost nobody like mainstream hears about that. They have no idea. Like people would not expect that that's the reality, and it's kind of crazy.
So where did you hear about this, or how did you find this out?
So this has been known for probably 2 decades now, but several podcasts that I watch, I think Rogan's mentioned it even. It's come up on Rogan, some of the guests. But tons of the podcasts in the space have been talking about this a lot more heavily now for like 3 to 5 years.
Is this kind of from, does this stem from, the moon landing and
that is part of it.
That?
Yeah. And that's kind of where I think people really first started asking questions, because that conspiracy, which who knows if it's true or not, if we did land on the moon, I tend to think we did, but my opinion on it is that, as far as the moon landing goes, we did land on the moon, but I don't think that what they told us was there is what was there.
Yeah.
Like, I think that some other crazy shit went down.
It was developed.
Yeah. I mean, there's theories wild enough that like the moon was essentially towed into place, and that the moon was designed for this planet to sustain life.
Right.
Or watch over us, or capture our souls is the other one.
Yeah. No, I've heard that. That's it's funny because I'm sorry. We talk about that stuff and laugh because it kind of sounds silly, but
you hope it's not true.
Well, yeah, no, right. But why is that less likely than any other theory? You just like throwing, spaghetti up against the wall.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. Like a lot of these guys, I forget the exact word for it, but the dudes that, remote viewing.
Yeah.
The guys that are really big into remote viewing, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of the guys that still do it, have supposedly traveled to the moon and, have seen some really crazy stuff. Like, and that's kind of where that theory stemmed out of, was that they, there was a soul catching machine on the moon that, basically keeps us in perpetual servitude to whoever these masters
prisoners.
are. Yeah. Soul prisoners, basically. And yeah, like obviously nobody knows, but I think it's equally as likely as almost anything else.
Yeah, that one's kind of scary to think about, I mean, you think
I'm having a pretty good time though. I don't know.
In life, in
Yeah,
general?
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
if they're trying to make everybody miserable, I'm not doing a very good job.
Well, I mean, your next life could be the worst,
right,
you know?
right,
Yeah, obviously, I love my life. Um, but I'm just saying, stuck in this cycle.
right.
What if you're stuck in a cycle of a guy or a gal who is abused every life or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that?
Or, well, like, I pose another question to you on the same topic. Like, what if you, right now in this life, if you knew that was true? If I came to you and I said, hey, I'm your master. I'm telling you right now, you're stuck here for eternity. Like, when you die, you're immediately reborn and you're going to go through, this entire process over again. How would that change your perspective on life?
Like, how would I live my life differently?
Yeah.
I don't know that it would. I just don't know.
I don't know that it could.
Yeah.
Because what can you do about it?
Look, even if somebody came to me, I mean, he would have to be in robes, and his name would have to be Jesus for me to
Right.
believe it.
Yeah.
If I was just given this knowledge that I knew was true, I don't know that it would change anything at all. Because then, because I still have this, you hear the theory that like we're here to learn stuff. It's like a school.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to sidestep that.
Right.
I'd still want to just stay on the path I'm on,
Yeah.
trying to be a good human being.
I agree.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting how Christianity itself, like I consider myself a Christian for sure, but so much of the teachings of Christianity align and do align with other belief systems.
Right.
Basically, if you're a spiritualist, a lot of them believe that like you go through trials and tribulations here on earth to prepare your soul for the next, ascension. There's different sects of spiritualism, but it's very similar to, the teachings of Jesus that you're here to learn to serve God and, and do God's will while you're here and prepare yourself for eternity.
Yep.
It's really not that dissimilar in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a lot, to take in and think about it. Like when we have this big, well, I mean, even before we've ever just, even thought about recording ourselves or sharing these conversations, we have these deep conversations quite often, and sometimes you come home from those, and my mind just keeps playing these things over and over, because I hear different possibilities, that you and I have talked about, and so it's definitely a lot to take in.
Well, and I guess bearing all that in mind, like, all these various possibilities, and we're not going to go super deep on these today. This is kind of just like an intro episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about some of the theories, but, keeping all that in mind, which method of disclosure would you prefer? Like, say the government was going to do disclosure tomorrow. The different kinds that have been described are like a incremental disclosure, which is like controlled releases. And then you have the chaotic disclosure, which is where it like potentially would leak out from, a leaker or a spy or some other foreign adversary would leak it all out at once and try to like shock the public into fear. And would you prefer one or the other, or does it really matter to you how you find the information out as long as you get it?
I don't know. The selfish part of me wants to, I think like everybody, it's like I want to know everything right now.
Right. Is that good for society?
But yeah, I mean, is it worth, the stock? You could get so deep into this.
Oh yeah.
You'd say, is it worth like the stock market crashing? Maybe it is. Maybe it shows that our stock market and everything that we've been doing is completely wrong, and we've fucked up. You know, and it course corrects. But just for when I think of like my children or my grandson, the safest possible way is probably the way I'd like to see it. So maybe incremental,
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth on this too, where I think part of me says like the American people, the people of the world, we can handle it. Like just get it all out there. But then you talk to some people out in public.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think we can handle it, because there's a lot of people that can't handle even mild changes to their worldview without complete ontological shock. Like it just breaks them.
I mean, look at the news, but most of that's bullshit too. But there are a large amount of people who are just waiting for the next opportunity to be a maniac.
Oh yeah.
And go on shooting sprees. I mean, there are people. I mean, so yeah, you give that type of information, and you and like, and the theory I think that I've heard is, we're sitting here, me and you, we're looking at our computers. The government or a hacker or whatever, they hack everything, all these systems, and no matter what electronic device you're on, you're hearing it. It's coming through, so you can't avoid it, or
Right.
unless you're like in a jungle maybe or something like that.
Yeah, even there now with satellites and drones,
Right.
and, directional microphones. Like, there's theories that they have, massive directional microphones up in space that can fucking center on you no matter where you are on Earth and hear exactly what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
none of us know that, but I don't think that I would doubt that too much with the other levels of technology that are out there, like with the coming, surveillance state.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I think definitely those are all possible.
Right. It's crazy what the next 5 to 10 years could be like with AI, with the rise of techno feudalism and all these things that could be coming on the docket, and even going back to like the 2027 theory, like I've also heard people say 2032 now, because that's what always happens, right? They move the goalposts down the road because 2027 comes and goes, nothing happens. Well, then it's 2032. And that's kind of what makes me think that this whole thing might be a psyop, or some kind of, maybe not even CIA, but like, the secondary government, the shadow government kind of thing, trying to manipulate society in a way to prepare them for the new world, the post-World War II order. And it might not even be aliens. It might be something else. We just we're not keyed into it yet.
When I've had these conversations with other people, and I say this, and I believe it, that we, all the bad, scary stuff going on, I think we're living in the most exciting time in human history.
I think that's true for sure.
And then I think people in the 20s probably thought that. People in the 30s.
The 40s, World War II.
Yeah. Like, so it's probably not like new, but I think when you consider the technology and just what is possible, look at AI now, what it can, it can create things that are, that only AI can see if it's real or not. And, it's crazy stuff. So I think it just ramps up the what ifs, or what could
the
be.
fears.
Yeah.
Because AI, you have a technology where, even a lot of the leading industry experts are saying, like, it's essentially a coin flip whether it kills us or not.
Yeah.
30, 40 years down the road. Like, they don't know. They're trying, potentially trying to make it aligned correctly and be a good technology for us. But even in a great scenario where we have, as like Elon calls it, universal high income, abundance, nobody wants for anything, like, well, he's talking about our country. What's that going to look like in Africa? Like, we don't know yet, because clearly the US is racing to get this before everybody else for a reason. If everybody's just going to be equal, why would it matter who got there first?
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's an incentive, a first mover incentive to get there.
I think that goes there. That plays right into the one topic, or the one point I said earlier about Hollywood. And it's like, okay, so now look at these movies like Terminator, that like AI comes and
Skynet's coming.
Yeah. And it was like, where did they just create that or put that out there to prep us? I don't know.
The part about that is hard to believe for me is, like, that was what, 25, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, easily, if not more. I guess I don't know what
in the 80s when the first Terminator came out.
So say it's 40 years ago. Like, do you really think that anybody has that much foresight and that much planning? Even the super rich, wealthy elite?
I know, yeah.
Because that's multi-generational. That's like, grandpa started the fucking plan. And then dad continued the plan, and now he's going to pass it off to the grandkids, and they're going to finish this shit.
Yeah.
Even for people that are super wealthy, old money, have all the time in the world to think about this, that's difficult, man.
Yeah.
Like,
and then to keep it as a secret.
Right. For generations,
yeah.
From everyone. It's tough.
So let's just play on that. Change this. Let's just think about that for a second. You'd have to be crazy rich, have control over, media, all that stuff, governments, you'd have to have control over that. And that, what's the point, I guess? Why?
Is it control? I think that's what most people would say, right? You ever see anything from like, there's a guy, Chris Williamson. There's several different podcasts that have done interviews with these guys talking about like, they know people that are very wealthy that are into the AI thing, right? Like CEOs, investors, and whatnot. And a lot of them are saying what they're telling the public about what the goal is, like, oh, we're not going to take your jobs. We're just going to, we're going to improve efficiency and the economy's going to be great, is like not at all what they're saying behind closed doors. Like they're lying to people essentially, and that they're envisaging a world where labor and capital are completely decoupled and labor has no bargaining power anymore. And in a scenario like that, labor, which is 99% of the human race, either dies or is in complete servitude and fiefdom to whatever capital wants.
It makes me think, when I think of, that Elon statement, everybody's going to have so much they'll want for nothing. I don't remember if it was a cartoon or something, but all I can picture are all these giant fat people that are in these cars, like little space
it's
cars.
like Idiocracy.
Yeah.
It's exactly like Idiocracy, man. And people have joked about that for the last 10 years, really ever since Trump got elected the first time, that we're like going into, I don't know, that timeline, right? But it's a plausible outcome now if AI goes the way that some people think it can go. Like I'm guessing we're probably still a few decades away from AI doing your plumbing, depending on how the Optimus robots do, stuff like that.
Yep.
But there will come a time within the next couple hundred years, conservatively, that people really aren't going to be needed to do most work anymore. And that's kind of scary.
I think of one day I was driving into work with a coworker. We did the ride share. And I'm trying to think of what year this was. It was probably 2015, 16-ish time frame. And he was very well read. He's a really smart guy. But we were talking, in a similar topic that we're doing now, the possibilities for the future. And he, in my mind, was so far ahead. He was talking about like basically what Tesla's doing with his vehicles.
Right.
And I still it's hard to believe, but I was like, no way.
Yeah, that
these
can't
vehicles
be,
are going to drive you around. How unsafe. And I'm like, the insurance companies, and I was just throwing all this stuff, and then here we are.
Yeah.
It's just real.
Only 10 years later, It's really not that much time.
I know.
The crazy thing, I mean, we're getting a little off topic, but we might as well just follow it down the rabbit hole now. Like, the crazy thing with AI is, like, if it comes to fruition the way that some people say it could, where it does create abundance, people don't have to work anymore, in that scenario, money loses all value.
Yeah.
The only input that matters at all is energy.
Yeah.
It's so hard. You can't even imagine a world like that. We've had the same basic monetary system for hundreds of years, like largely capitalist, largely like capital, invests in labor participates with capital. They create a product or a service and, they profit together. Obviously capital takes more of the cut, but, rising tide lifts all boats. Like the more money you can make, the more value you can create as a society, the better off everybody is. That whole system is gone. And that means the stock market doesn't exist. So everybody's 401ks are at zero. If that happens, that means like your savings, you've been saving your whole life to retire to fucking Punta Cana. Well, that's gone now. Like you have nothing. So what does a world like that look like? And that's like going in, I think, to our final point. If you had to predict what's going to come, and we'll say the next 5 years, what do you think is the most likely outcome for what that looks like, at least on that time horizon?
Kind of like talking about disclosure and the possibilities.
Yeah, just kind of everything, like the way disclosure shakes out with the way technology's moving right now and the weird, socio-political stuff we're going through. Like, what do you think is the best outcome?
So, I guess I'm not sure, but I will tell you that over the last 3 years, but definitely the last 18 months, I have felt that there's something absolutely major that's going to change our world. I there's all sorts of theories, but I feel it. I feel that there is something major that's going to happen. And who knows what that is? That's why these topics are all kind of interesting and tied together.
Right.
You know, Chris Bledsoe and all stuff. Yeah, I think that I couldn't tell you technologically. You know, I don't think I could predict, and I don't even know that I care enough to.
I don't know
you
that
know,
anybody can. Really,
yeah.
You know.
But you know, just generally, and I'd like to hear what you have to say too, obviously on that. But I do feel like we are probably on the doorstep of a major change and not just like the United States. I think Earth is, things are going to change massively.
Yeah.
And that could be all sorts of stuff, but this has nothing really to do, well, maybe it does, you know, in the back of my mind, because you hear all this stuff. But
right.
I, that's the best way I could describe it, is I feel it. I feel things are going to change.
Do you feel that it's going to be good or bad? Or do you not have any feeling on that?
Yeah, well, yeah. But now this gets into my faith, because, you know, my faith is all a good outcome.
Right.
You know, I go to heaven. That's my faith, right? So yeah, even if 3 years on Earth, the last 3 years were all horrible, nobody wants to live through that. The outcome is heaven.
Right.
So I'm okay with that, you know?
Yeah.
It's probably a mix of both.
Oh, right.
I get,
yeah.
you know, there can be some good and bad.
I have a similar feeling that I think that there is a big change coming. I think something's going to happen, but I don't think it takes a rocket surgeon to see that coming with everything that's kind of consolidating at one timeline here, right? I think the most likely outcome is that we get some form of continued soft disclosure where, you know, the government continues releasing stuff. I don't think there's ever going to be a moment in disclosure where it's like, oh shit, the aliens are here, unless the aliens or whatever they are want that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that the government's ever going to do that. They're going to keep releasing stuff. And then at some point down the road, they're going to be like, what do you mean you want disclosure? We've been giving it to you for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee that is a lot more appealing to them than like the oh shit moment and they dump everything, right? Unless they want to scare you.
Yeah.
If they want to scare you, they might do that.
Well, yeah, then we could be watching a news conference or whatever during disclosure, and then all of a sudden, boom, President Trump switches to an alien.
Right,
His cloaking device.
Some crazy shit, yeah.
Malfunctions. Because they could definitely, you know, aliens could already be here.
Yeah, right. Well, there's people that have said that for decades, dude. Like, but I do think it's kind of why we, I think, brought up the whole AI technology thing. I do think that that's involved in this somehow, and I haven't fully put my finger on how yet. My gut tells me that they may be using AI as an excuse, AI and like UFOs in combination, as an excuse to change the entire world order.
Yeah.
Because those are two huge existential things that change the way that pretty much everybody looks at the world. And if you hit people with both of those things within a 5, 6, 7, 10-year time span, like, it's a pretty legitimate excuse to change how we do stuff, right? Because I just don't think a country like the US, as, you know, much as we love to hate each other and fight and all this stuff, I don't think you're ripping capitalism out of this country over almost anybody's cold dead body.
Right.
You know, there's obviously people that are pro-socialist and stuff like that, but you're not going to change the whole culture unless you have something megalithic, something gigantic that's going to just completely shatter people's worldview.
So let me ask you, you know, on a would you rather, if you, as far as like the disclosure, would you rather gain all this information about our world, aliens, just in general, and it changes things so much that it's uncomfortable, maybe forever? Or would you rather be in the dark and just no changes, no new information, and you just live out the rest of your life?
Super easy question for me. The latter.
Yeah.
I would much rather not know.
Really?
I'm super curious about what this stuff all means. I always have been. the longer that I dig into it and, listen to these podcasts, do these deep reading dives, the longer it really seems like whatever it is very dark.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know it.
Yeah.
I always look at it like I'll figure it out when I die. I don't need to know that here. That's not part of my journey here. It doesn't need to be. Obviously, if you do find out, like, you got to make the best of whatever it is, right? Like, that's just your destiny at that point. But I would rather not know. And I would rather just basically whatever happens with AI or aliens or whatever interdimensional beings, just let me keep my house, let me keep my family. If you don't want me to work, that's fine, but you got to give me my food, you got to keep me. That I obviously wouldn't like that. I like working. I think a lot of people find meaning in their work. But if that's what it had to be, just leave me alone. Leave me the fuck alone, And
I think that there's definitely stages of, as the kids would say, awakening, or you're woke or whatever.
mm-hmm.
But I think, and I feel like I've probably gotten to this point, and maybe still a little bit in that stage of, I've heard everything. I've seen all this stuff. I've seen the Q posts and all this stuff.
Right.
And I think you get to a point where you're like, oh, nothing's real. This is all fake. This is all scripted. I don't care. I'm going to turn blinders to the rest of the world, and I'm going to enjoy time with my son and my wife and my grandson.
Right.
And all the other stuff. Who cares? We'll figure it out when we're dead.
Well, what can you do?
Yeah,
you can only control the stuff you can control, right? Like, and I think sadly, part of what they're doing, like the deep state or the shadow government, is making it so nothing is real. They're making it that way. So you can't tell up from down, left from right, and you have no option other than to just turn inward.
Yeah.
But I also think that that's probably the best way to live your life. Turn inward, to your community, your family, your friends, take care of each other as best as you possibly can. And a lot of that other shit, you can't change it anyway. So,
right.
What's one person going to do to, change the deep state or the CIA or, inner political bullshit? It's just not going to happen.
Right. No,
So,
I think it was a couple years ago. You and I were, actually, it was longer. It was like the COVID time, and we had a similar conversation. And it was like, you know what? Just look around you. This is your life, not what's on TV.
Right.
We live in a small town, and so obviously it's a different. Things affect people differently. But
Right.
So look at your life. Are you happy? Are things going good? Then don't be so fucking scared of everything.
Right.
So this is my reality.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, especially the last, really since 9/11, like, it's been the biggest weakness with the American population is they're scared of fucking everything now.
Yeah.
Everybody's terrified of everything. You look at, like, your parents' generation, all they fucking do is watch CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and get scared every day of everything.
Yeah.
And it's intentional. They're doing it to that generation on purpose because they're the Walter Cronkite generation that lived where you could actually trust the media to a certain extent. So they believe all this BS.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, pretty much every generation below them now understands that it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
And you can't believe everything you see. But it's kind of sad to see, how easily manipulated they are by traditional media. And then I think to myself, and I'm like, is my generation equally as manipulatable by social media?
For sure.
And it absolutely is.
Yeah. Whether, yes, it's media still. It's something
Right.
that you're not creating. Somebody else is. And just like we're, talking about all these theories, there are people who are paid to be really, really good actors.
Yes.
And, I know there's some, again, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, a few here and there. Most of my social media use is X.
Yeah.
And I guess Facebook a little bit because I like to go on Marketplace and buy stuff. But yeah, you can scroll through your feed on X, and you look at these posts because I follow certain people, and you always see this, like a picture of a police siren and an explosion, and it's breaking news, and you're like, every one of your fucking posts is like that. Like this.
It's clearly curated for you,
yeah.
like very obviously. And I've begun to recognize that more and more now on, well, not even just X, but on everything. When I was doing a deep dive on AI like 2 weeks ago or whatever, and I was really looking into it, starting to get kind of nervous because I'm like, oh shit, like I don't want anybody I love to lose their job, you know? Like I was pretty keyed in on AI, but I wasn't keyed in on, I think, the intent of what was going on until recently. And but I did notice it wasn't even within a day, it wasn't even within like 6 hours, it was within like 5 minutes. My entire feed, just from watching a couple AI videos the full length and maybe liking them or following a guy, everything was fucking AI doomerism instantly.
Absolutely.
And it takes over your mind, it makes you afraid. But it's like that with everything, dude. It's like that with advertisements too. It's like that with media, just like the shows you watch. They've got the average American so fucking pegged on what they like. It's unbelievable.
Well, dude, this was I don't know, a long time ago for me, but I went to it was some type of seminar for work. It was like recruiting.
Oh, okay.
You know, I went there as like a manager or whatever, but you know, we brought HR and it was like a recruiting thing. And let's call this 8 or 10 years ago.
Yep.
And monster.com was like
I forgot
a
about
part of it.
monster.com.
But that's the first time I heard about them basically I can't even, I don't know what the term is.
Like targeting, selective targeting.
Yeah, selective targeting, where all of a sudden, you know, all these ads are just inundating your feed. And that's crazy. Like, that's like a complete invasion of privacy, I think.
It is, but we've willingly given it up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's the shitty part about it.
Yeah,
it's
you
like,
give it up because life's easier or whatever.
You're willing to give up liberty for convenience.
Yeah.
And 90% of Americans do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it too. We all do it.
Right.
Like they make it so it's easy to do. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You're not actively making a choice like, oh, I would rather give up my privacy because now I have, you know, this app on my phone that I can talk to my family with. They slip it into the fucking fine print on page 97 that they can record you and sell your data.
Yeah.
And you just don't think about it because it's not in your face, but it's
and
still
at
happening.
some point, because I've clicked on the terms of, you know, whatever the terms of use or.
Yeah.
I have, as I'm sitting there and I'm going to click the box and hit continue, I've thought, I honestly don't even care. I have nothing to hide, that type of thing.
Right.
You know, in my mind, I thought there could be something in here that's, you know, takes money out of my bank account or who knows.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
Takes my privacy. And because, well, maybe it's because there's so much stuff out there. I don't even care. I'm not reading it. Click, yep, because I want that app. So yeah, there's that, you know, knowingly or unknowingly, I am giving up privacy for convenience.
Yeah. And it's in the back of your head. Like, I think especially after the last, like, 10 years since, you know, all the laws following 9/11 where we, you know, Patriot Act and everything. Like, I also love how they name shit like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? Like, oh, we're going to call it the Patriot Act. So everybody, you know, supports it and it's, like, completely stripping away your constitutional freedoms of privacy. But, like, especially after that, I think that most people now know, at least in the back of their head, like, something's wrong. Like, this is not the way that this should have gone down. This isn't what the founders intended, let alone what, you know, we intended 30 or 40 years ago to happen.
Let me ask you one more question. We're probably getting close to wrapping up here.
Yep.
But and this is, well, it's in the same realm, but I remember the feeling immediately after 9/11. Everybody was a New Yorker. It literally united people like I've never experienced before or since then. If something similar were to happen right now, do you think that all Americans would have the same reaction?
Not all. There would be factions.
Yeah, I think it's more divided now than maybe ever.
I think you'd still get about 70%.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, because there's maybe 10 or 15% on the super far right and super far left that'll just never get along with each other, right? But that other 70% in the middle, something like that would still bring them together.
Yeah, and I suppose it kind of depends on where the pendulum is in its swing.
Yeah,
in
right.
our society, but
that's kind of what I fear is where it'll swing back to in the next few years too. Is like I just want somebody who's not an idiot, who's not a warmonger, who's mildly intelligent in the White House. I am not a super political person. I just want somebody who's trying to do the best for all Americans. And if you had a guy like that in the White House, or in the future in the White House, when said bad thing that unites Americans happens, I think we'd be in a pretty good place. But
Yeah.
It's hard to even envision that at this point in time with how divided everybody is.
Yeah, and that's, at like the whole 9/11 and it uniting. I think, like, if you were going to tell me, hey man, I'm giving you a heads up, 9/11 times 2 is happening tomorrow. Right now, I would think like it'll unite a lot of people, but nothing like 9/11. I think with the caveat, unless motherships started showing up.
Yeah, that is the one wild card.
Yeah,
it's the number one. I don't know if you've seen this, like the Reagan and I think it was Gorbachev were at a conference. This is in the 80s at some point, and Reagan turned to Gorbachev and asked him, like, if beings from another world showed up today, would you fight with us? And without even, he looked kind of surprised, but without even thinking about it, he said, of course I would, Mr. President.
Yeah.
And when you watch that or hear that meeting, he wasn't joking.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, very instructive, I think, to watch that and be like, he wasn't fucking around. Like, maybe he knew something that, who knows? Maybe he was just messing with the guy too in some kind of weird political gamesmanship or whatever, because Reagan was a smart guy. But it makes you think, like, that might be the only thing that would unite most of humanity.
Yeah. And it should, or I would think it should, that should play into your daily life a little bit, and make you at least realize that, whoever you vote for, whatever, we have more in common than we have, difference.
That's like when you hear about the astronauts the first time they go up in space and they look down at the planet, and there's a word for it. I can't remember exactly what they call it, but they essentially have like this realization, like, holy shit, like, they instantly care more about the planet, about everybody, because they're like, they see this tiny little blue and green rock in space, and they look at everything else that's out there, and they're like, wow, like, it's existential, it's life-changing.
Right.
So I think, if you can take some of that attitude and try to, like, give yourself that viewpoint without, having to go up in space, like, it's be better for you, for sure. But I suppose we can probably wrap it up on that. I think that was a good first pod. I think we learned a lot.
Should we give them a little our plan for our next podcast? So just kind of generally, we're going to talk about state parks and some of the conspiracies about what goes on in state parks. Yeah, some of the mysteries kind of behind it. So we're looking forward to talking to you guys again. We're still working on getting all the social media and everything set up, but I will link it in the episode after I get it done and we get this posted. But just wanted to thank you guys all for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. All right. Thanks, guys.
A band of shadows is a